Our show wouldn't exist without you listening. But if you want more information on how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or just to stay in touch, go to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there. Welcome back, everybody, to Flipping the Lid. You know what we do here now, and what's really cool at this point in the game is that we have some incredible guests that we've already interviewed who are introducing us to incredible other human beings. And that's how this connection happened. Kim Daly, who was on our show, who just was absolute fire, at the end of our conversation said, you just have to know Jim. He and I have connected. I've been on his show. But what's really cool about Jim is this is an individual who has literally changed the face of financial understanding and literacy for decades of his clients. They've endured some significant impact in their business over those last few years and really shifted from kind of the traditional financial model to really getting people to be their own banker and understand how they can use their cash and capital for growth in a really intentional way. The only way to get to that place of clarity and be able to deliver those types of services at the level that they do is if he's done some internal work himself. And I can tell you in the time that we've spent together, he's a very vulnerable, very authentic, heart-led individual. And I'm really excited to jump in with you today, Jim.
Thank you, Brian, for having me, man. I'm looking forward to this. And got to say up front, I love Kim Daly. She's one of my best friends, and she's fireball, just like you said.
She's unreal, man. I just, anytime I come across people with that kind of energy, that kind of charisma, creating that kind of impact, they always deserve the shout out and everything that they are producing in the world. So, you know, I'm pretty sure she referenced you, not even just as one of her really good friends, but as one of her mentors. And so since we're there, before we jump into you, I'd love to honor that for a second. Do you mind talking about that mentor-mentee relationship and how it developed to a friendship?
Yeah, you know, it's really funny because I found Kim Daly on a friend of mine. I went to a friend of mine's website and I said, oh, this guy's doing a podcast. He's kind of dry. I wonder what it sounds like. And so the guy had Jay Leno on his podcast, by the way, but I don't want to listen to Jay Leno. I'm kind of searching Kim Daly franchising. And I said, you know, it was one of those just God or universe things. I just clicked on it and said, I want to listen to this one.
That's amazing.
I thought, man, this woman has got some energy, just like you said. And I thought, I got to have her on my podcast. So I called her, left her a message. Hey, I'm interested in having you on my podcast. Give me a call back. She called me back. And Brian, I talked to her for 2 hours on the phone.
I believe that.
And I was like, who is this one? Felt a little guilty. I was married at the time. And I thought, hey, do I have to tell my wife I just talked to this woman for 2 hours? Because I felt this connection, not like, you know, not a romantic way, but in a friendship way. And I was like,
just human to human, man.
Yeah. And I just thought, and it was just natural. It wasn't intended. It just happened organically. And then I thought, man, I got to get to know her better. I had her on the podcast. She was great. And she said, well, I want to know what you do. And I said, well, you know, look, I free financial slaves. And I know this sounds weird, but everybody's a financial slave. They just don't know it. And everything we're taught about money is wrong. And it's to feed the system of banks, Wall Street, and the government. And, you know, look, people think I'm crazy maybe, but like, she goes, no, I want to learn about this.
Yeah.
So I taught her more and more about how banks work and how Wall Street works and how 401ks are not your greatest asset. And she said, oh my gosh, I want to be free. I want to do this. And we started talking about owning businesses. And I've used this concept to buy over 30 businesses and do it in super creative ways. And her being in the business of showing people the power of business ownership, she said, okay, I want to do this. And I said, well, okay, well, let's talk. Let's just get to know each other better. And the more that I talked to her, I said, hey, you know what? I think there's a way for you to take your business to another level. And I'd love to help you. And you don't need to pay me anything or anything. I'll just
awesome.
do it because I'm your friend. And that's kind of how it started. And then, you know, she gives me way more credit than I deserve because, you know, she's changed her life and she is really blowing things up in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of her energy. It's because of her caring. It's because of her heart. And, you know, you can't buy that. Money doesn't matter when you have that.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, I will celebrate. I don't know that it was all public knowledge, and so I won't say anything, but I know that their family just got a really good piece of news that's a huge win for a stage of life they've been in. And so I couldn't be more happy to see the impact expand through her, and I'm going to be supporting her for a long time. So we're not here to talk about Kim because we've already had a deep conversation on that, but I am really grateful for even how you navigated that answer, the grace with which you navigated it, and really how you edified such an incredible woman who's having such great impact. You know, all of those ways of communication are a clear representation of who you are as well. And though I gave a very brief descriptor of who you are in the beginning, one of my favorite questions to ask, and one of the only repeat questions I ask on almost every show, is this: who are you in your words, Jim?
Yeah, you know what? To tell you who I am, I'm going to give you, first of all, Brian, I asked that of one of my mentors. He was 85. I said, Nelson, tell me a little bit about yourself. Don't ask an 85-year-old to tell you, because it's going to be 30 minutes, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not going to give you a 30-minute version. I'm 57, so don't worry, Brian. But I got to start from the beginning, because this makes sense on the money thing. So I actually have 5 siblings, and I'm one of the middle children, right? But I was the only one given up for adoption. And the reason was that my mother said she was raped. Her husband thought she was having an affair. Yeah. So I was given up, and he basically said, if you bring this baby home, I'll kill it. So I was given up for adoption. I lived in foster care in Los Angeles for 7 years. Then I was adopted into a really abusive, poor, I don't know how that happened. I'd like to go back and talk to those government officials, but into a really poor, abusive family. And for the next 11 years, until I got out of that, I learned a lot about how not to do things. I worked in a casket factory when I was 13 years old, swinging a hammer, and I met my first business owner. Happened to run into that same guy in one of the most rundown neighborhoods around me. I grew up in Inglewood, California, and he was picking weeds out of a yard. I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I own this house." Now, he lived in Palos Verdes. So, like, the difference between Inglewood and Palos Verdes is night and day. I would ride my motorcycle up there. I would think, what do these people know that I don't know? What do they do that I'm not, that I, like the people in my neighborhood aren't doing? I don't want to live in Inglewood. I want to live here. And so that started my fascination. My adopted father drove a trash truck. My mom worked at the casket factory that I worked at, and they didn't know anything about money. They had a 9th grade education and a 4th grade education, believe it or not. And so, and they were alcoholics, and, we'll keep it with the PG version of the story. But I had this fascination, like, why do these people have money? Why do they have abundance? Yeah. And I don't. I got scarcity. I'm standing in line for government cheese, doing all of the things that nobody wants to do, right? Unless you're forced to. Well, so I go to school, I try to do the right thing. I get a job in Wall Street, and I become a full services financial planner, fee-based financial planner. I got $700 million under management. I'm charging 1%. This is back in the day. We charged a lot more. And it was, I'm doing well. My clients are doing okay, but they got to pay me 1%, right? So I just really looked for an understanding of money. And I thought I had it because I had Wall Street's perspective. After 15 years, I analyzed all of my clients, and I said, I threw out all the ones that got lucky, right, Brian? I mean, I don't care about the ones that were janitors at Google or whatever, and they got lucky. I can't plan for luck. But I looked at all of the other clients. This is before being able to search HubSpot or something, right?
Yeah.
And it came down to 2 things: business owners and real estate. And I thought, well, wait a minute. That's not what I'm telling people to do with their money. I'm telling them to put it in Wall Street. Wall Street's making money. I'm making money. My clients think that they're getting 9.38% average rate of return, which net is a little bit over 4. And that doesn't even include inflation.
Yeah.
So after it's all said and done, they're not making anything.
Yeah.
But everybody else is feeding off of them. So I said, you know what? I'm going to turn this thing upside down. I'm going to teach people how money really works, how wealthy people look at money, how to get money to flow to you instead of away from you, how to buy assets that keep up with inflation, not instruments that are destroyed by inflation. And I let my whole firm go just to flip it upside down. And it was the greatest thing that I ever did, for not only for me and my family and my wealth, but also for every client. And that's when I started accumulating companies. And that's how I got to over 30 companies, is saying, I'm not focusing on instruments, I'm buying assets.
So you packed a lot into the answer around who you are, and you weaved so many really interesting components that I'm going to pick up on and we're going to integrate throughout this conversation. You know, it's interesting because you talked as much about who you are as you talked about what you do and what you've done. And I have to tell you, you're very fitting for this show because you literally flipped the lid in your life and business and went a different way. You burned the ships. You decided that you were walking away from something based on your old belief systems, your old processes, to chase new opportunity, better, more congruence, more alignment in your life and in the lives of others. And it's fascinating that people so many times reach this high level of success and then do nothing else, or don't reinvent themselves, but then they just remain stuck in the seduction of success and miserable for a big period of their life. And you were one that took the reins in your hands. You know, what's interesting is I'm getting to be known as the garbage man because we help people identify and remove the trash from their past, right? We help people transform their waste into wealth. And that means more than just money, right? Yeah. And I know that you know portions of my story around that, but I loved the fact that you even referenced your father being a garbage man and how you flipped your lid. The reality of it is, though, you brushed over so many really impactful elements in your life in the beginning periods.
Right.
And I want to go back there. Okay. Because your story, though you brushed through pieces of it, provides more wealth and freedom in your truth to give other people permission to feel and say things that maybe they haven't before, and to have words to articulate their feelings and understandings. And hitting it at the tops of the waves isn't enough in this case.
Okay, let's do it.
Before you even entered into this world, there was a message that you weren't wanted, that you weren't good enough, that you were going to be crushed and eliminated if it maintained in the current household that you were coming into. What was the first time in your life that you remember or became conscious of the fact that you were in foster care versus with your natural born parents? And how did that observation and awareness at whatever age it was affect your perception of yourself and the world?
Yeah, you know, I was like 6 or 7, I think probably closer to 6. And what we would do to eat, you would sit down at the table, right? And there's kids that are older. And these are kind of like, I think people that foster kids are great. These weren't great situations.
Yep.
Okay. I think there's a lot of beautiful people that do that out there.
But there's a lot that aren't also. Like it's okay to say that. Yeah.
I just happen to be lucky enough, Brian, to be in the aren't part.
The aren't category.
I had a lot of aren'ts.
It sounds like you had a lot of luck early in your life, Jim. I mean, if we want to call it that, right?
I don't believe in luck. Okay?
I don't either.
What I say is this is a line from a song, but time is all the luck you need.
That's right.
And so I don't need luck. I don't want luck. Just give me a chance. And so, but what at the dinner table, you would have like peanut butter and jelly, right? I mean, it's nothing fancy, right? And if you didn't eat fast enough, then the bigger kids would take the rest of your food, right? So I learned that, and I thought, look, I know what you're thinking. There's somebody out there that is thinking this. Well, just lick your food. Nobody's going to take your sandwich and eat it if you lick the bread. Yeah, they will. If you're hungry, you don't care about that, right? You're gonna take that sandwich. So I learned to eat very quickly, and I also then, like I didn't want peanut butter and jelly all the time. I wanted something else. To this day, I can't eat mac and cheese because I ate so much mac and cheese for dinner. I don't want mac and cheese ever again. So not that I don't like it, I just don't want it. And so that was one of my first memories and then going to the foster house with your friends and they'd go, oh, you live there. Oh. And then they totally saw you in a different light. They're like, oh, okay, you're one of those kids. And their parents, I remember driving with a mom, and she was like, hey, like, don't get comfortable in this car and hanging out with my son, because, you know, that's not going to happen.
So were you aware that you weren't wanted at that time?
I think so. Because, you know, it is weird too not to be adopted till you're 7. So, you know, I don't know all the reasons. I don't know all of the circumstance, but...
And frankly, it doesn't matter, to be honest.
It doesn't matter. No,
it's what happened. Matter. It's about what do you extract from that and become intentional with moving forward, right?
Yeah, you know, it's funny, Brian, because now I'll back further. So people will say to me, well, you should be anti-abortion. You know, and I'm like, because look, abortion wasn't legal in 1965. So if it was, I might have been an abortion.
You might not be around.
Right?
Yeah.
But look, that's not my fight.
Yeah.
I fight my fights, not, you know, like, not those fights. Right. I mean, so that's not it. Somebody could say, well, okay, for 55 years, Brian, though, what my adopted mother, who I met in my late 20s, said that she was raped, right? So, okay, now you deal with, okay, I'm a product of rape. Who was the person that was raped? Right. That's in my DNA. But then I found out at 55, because I had one of those siblings do a 23andMe test, that the person that said he would kill me actually was my biological father.
Wow. So, 55 years old before you learned that.
Yeah.
That's a significant hit to personal identity. Like, let's just call it what it is. You know, you're 57 today, and we started at the beginning, but you brought us real time, full circle. Yeah. Take us to 55 when you found that out. How did that unwind? And talk to me intellectually and emotionally what you were processing over that next few months.
Well, the thing that I learned is that nobody gets to determine my value, my worth. And, you know, look, when I told this one friend of mine, he goes, like, I didn't know him that well. And he just said, well, tell me, you know, do you have any brothers or sisters? You know, tell me about your upbringing or something like that. And I just kind of laid it out there. And he goes, how much therapy have you had? And I said, a lot.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I hated school, but I love education. So I read like crazy. And I read every book about complex PTSD, trauma, everything that you could think of. And it taught me that none of those people determine my value or my worth in this world. I mean, like, it's based on what I do. But it always drove me to not want to be the star, wanting to help other people.
Right.
And, you know, people that really know me, they'll say, well, you know, like, I had this one therapist one time, he said, you know, you have the childhood of a serial killer. You know, like, you could have been, but you have a conscience. Thank God I have a conscience, right? But I turned it like the other way. I just want to help people. And that's it. And that's how I determine my worth and my value, is helping other people. And with no expectation of anything in return.
Yeah, I mean, you can feel that heart coming through you, and that's very obvious. You know, you know my concept on my belief around the human experience and how we all seek and desire to feel safe and protected, seen, understood, and connected, right? You're going through foster care. You're not in a safe environment. What age were you when you first felt safe? And what age were you when you first felt protected?
You know, that's a good question. I would say probably I felt safe and protected when I was about 25, 26. And that's when I started to get really good at what I did. And I started to build financial security. I, bought my first home. So then I had kind of that security, you know, a house to live in that I, theoretically nobody could take away.
Yeah.
And I had that stability. So I would say I was that age, and it was really, again, self-created. So I didn't have to, I didn't owe anybody anything for that.
Yeah, that's beautiful, though, that you were able to establish a position in your mid-20s after seeking it for your entire life to finally have a little bit of position of safety and protection. As you know, I believe that when we don't feel safe and protected, we carry armor and we bury things that typically are the areas of pain, right? You and I've probably read all those same trauma books. We've unpacked human behavior. We've done the study because we needed to for our own survival, right? For our own perseverance, for our own ability to like not be on edge and creating damage in every periods of our life. We took the awareness and ownership, both of us, in different ways, in different respects to do that. Are you aware of the primary areas that you were protecting yourself pre that safety and protection? And if so, what were they?
Yeah, I would say like what I did is I needed to have some control. So I would do things where, when I could drive, I would do this thing where there was an area where I would stop at a stoplight. I would punch my car. I would punch the gas. I would go under the freeway up, and I would get airborne going across the traffic. And it was just like, hey, if there's cars coming, I'm going to be a blood spot on the street. And if it's not, but I was taking control. I wasn't suicidal but I was like daring God to kill me. Like,
well, dude, I used to say that I used to have to brush the edge of death to even feel alive.
Exactly. And so, like if you're at the beach, we're at the pier, it's in the middle of the night and somebody says, I dare you to jump off the pier. I'm the guy, I'm already in the water. Right?
You jumped before they said it.
and so like it was very reckless, very, in a different way. I could have been that kind of adrenaline junkie, but it wasn't really for the adrenaline. It was to take back control.
It was control
of what was happening in my life. And so I've never had a job as an adult where I got a salary and a paycheck, and I never wanted that. I always wanted to eat what I kill, so to speak, and have it on my merits. And when I say that, I don't mean like taking advantage of something. It's like I know that I provide something in that I knew that I could provide something that I could show people that if I can do it, you can do it. And I can show you how to do it. And I will show you how to do it. And I'm not going to tell you how it might be done. I'm going to tell you how other people have done it. I'll tell you how I did it. And I'll give you every example under the sun. So once as a kid, I didn't know where like dinner was going to come from. So I got a job at 13, had a paper route. I did that. I bought a moped. I didn't have a driver's license, but I bought a moped so I could have 2 paper routes. I did all of that stuff just to eat. And I got my first pair of brand new shoes when I was 13 years old. I was walking down the street. I thought everybody was looking at my shoes. Like I was kind of it was a different way of growing up, right? So I learned though, along that way, humility. And I learned that I don't need to be the star. I don't need to be the center of attention. I don't need to have ego, because ego only gets in the way.
Always.
What I needed was to know that I was providing value and service to other people. Yeah. And that's how and then that increased my self-worth.
Of course it did. And it's interesting because in some ways, people so many times that are high performers have learned to receive love, validation, and connection through performance, right? They literally justify and establish their worth through an exchange of time, energy, services, whatever, right? In your case, what's really interesting is I don't see as much the jump for external seeking of validation as it was for you needing to prove it to yourself.
Yeah.
That you finally could have control and influence over your destiny. And so I think that is even more powerful in some cases because you were focused on the inside transformation that was going to be required for you to externally take control of your life, but your focus on doing it for other people as well is pretty profound because it's not what you wanted from them. And so what I'm really curious about as well is in that period of time, you don't feel safe and protected until you're 25. You start getting some financial success. You, for the first time, are getting a house. Who was the first person that really saw you and understood who you were?
It's funny because I remember that there was this executive with this insurance company that came and visited, and the guy said, you're obviously smart. And I was like, you think I'm smart? Like, I don't think anybody had ever told me that I was smart, right? And so I think that kind of validated it, but also then when somebody wanted me to be a partner in the firm at 25, I was like, really? Okay. And they wanted me to teach other people in the firm how to do what I did. And so then that was kind of the first time that I thought, okay, well, look, what I'm doing is just, I mean, it's simple. But simplicity is elusive, right? Some people want to overthink it, overplan it, I was just taking action every day. And I was reading every day. That's one of the things that somebody told me. It was the janitor at a health club that I was working at, by the way. And he said, really super successful people read at least an hour a day. And I thought, well, what do you mean? What do they read? Like, I was not very, I didn't understand the world. And he said, nonfiction, like personal development. Have you ever heard of personal development? I said, I haven't. And he said, well, start with this book. And I don't honestly remember the book, but it was like Think and Grow Rich or
one of the classics.
One of the classics, right? And I thought it was boring as anything. And I read it for an hour a day, and I read it like 3 times in a row. And I went, you know what? I get it, right? And so it was again, I see all of these things as blessings.
Of course.
I didn't take seeing Dwayne McIntyre pulling weeds and go, I need to be in real estate, because he lived, by the way, he adopted 4 kids in addition to that. So these 4 kids get to live in Palos Verdes. He sent them all to Pepperdine, right? Which is a great school, very expensive.
Yeah.
And, I could have thought to myself, and I probably did, Brian, like, wait a minute, this isn't fair. But then what it did is it taught me life isn't fair. Who cares? I don't need it to be fair. I don't even need it to be a level playing field. Just let me on the field.
So it was really even in the professional setting that you started to first be seen and having someone lean into you, which again, so you just had this void of 20 to 25 years of disconnection. Kind of, right?
Yeah.
Like no isolated, alone.
Whatsoever.
Yeah.
If you know anything about attachment styles, chaotic, I'm not even sure chaotic defines it, but there was no attachment.
Well, there couldn't be in anything that you were talking about. And you were truly trying to push the limits of life, to feel alive, to search for connection, to search for meaning, right? With no healthy model to do so. And though I don't believe in luck, I actually believe all of that stuff has shaped. I do believe that the timing is always perfect. And so there was a reason that those 20, 25 years had the darkness and the void and the gaps, even though you had good periods in that time as well, even though you established some sense of self in that period of time. Like there was all purpose, and you're able to see that, and you landed in a place that then amplified your next period of life. So bring me into the loop. I don't know actually much about your family life. Kids, have you been married? Are you married? Give me some context, because I'd really like to explore that, because I hear so much heart from you and so much care. I have to believe family is important to you.
So I got married 2 weeks before my first daughter was born at 22. Okay. And so, again, not knowing the right way to do things, had 2 children within 13 months, and within 4 years was divorced, because obviously didn't lay the groundwork. Was, for the next 12 years, I was single, really working on the things that I needed to work on. And only for like the last 3 of those 12 years. Before that, I was focused on work. I was a single dad too, because my ex-wife, she brought the children all their clothes, like at 12 years old, all their clothes in trash bags, and said, you raise them, right? And
wow.
Yeah, and I had them most of the time before that anyway, but she was remarried, she was struggling in her marriage, and she wanted to make sure her marriage survived more than the children, right? So then I get married, and I was married for 18 years, and for 13 of those years, we raised our granddaughter, who we started raising at 11 months old. My daughter that had Riley at 20 got ovarian cancer, kind of went off the deep end, didn't think that she could be a mom, kind of fought this thing. She still struggles with that today, even though she's in Riley's life. But Riley lives full-time with me. But so everything's going along. My wife 2 years ago says, hey, I can't be happy in this marriage if I'm raising Riley. Riley doesn't want me to be the mom. She doesn't want me to do the. Riley was just rebelling a little bit. Every kid. Okay, you got to remember your audience too, by the way. Like you're saying, hey, I want to abandon and reject this little girl. Not on my watch, man. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, so I said, look, obviously you're going through something. Let's get some counseling. Let's work on it. Let's make this work. And we did that for 1.5 years. And this person has trauma. This person has abuse. She has a lot of things in her life that she's just now dealing with. I love her. I'll always love her. She's a friend of mine. All of those things. We just couldn't be married if that's a condition of our marriage, because a condition of our marriage is doing the right thing. And I see Riley as a blessing, not as a burden in any way. I'm blessed to get to be able to raise this little girl and to see, because she's brilliant and she's just amazing every day. So so I live in Southwest Florida with my 14-year-old granddaughter and myself, and we have a new chapter in our lives. And Brian, because I love adversity, is our house was destroyed in Hurricane Ian, and we spent 7 months rebuilding it. And Rye and I had to move 7 times during that time, which was a huge trigger for me moving around.
Of course it was. Of course it was.
And this little girl is getting tougher and more mature. And I would love for her to be just a little girl, but she's got her own special path in life, and it's going to make her exceptional.
I just want to thank you for your vulnerability already in this conversation, Jim. It's not lost on me all of the little embedded pieces that you've hit on. Who do you go to lean on? Because you're someone who carries a lot of weight for a lot of other people.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you, the thing that I do is it's my friends. It's my close friends. It's also, it's my faith. I go to the Bible. I read the Bible. I read about people that have had way worse things happen to them in their lives. I read about, and I always think it's interesting, Brian, because I believe that, there's a song that says Jesus chose 12 people that no one else would have chosen, right? And people think, especially in today's world, people think, well, Christians are very rigid and everything. Those are the religious, right? Religious people are the people that crucified Jesus, right? That's not the people I'm talking about. I don't identify with those people. I say the F word, I lust, I do a lot of things. I'm not trying to be holier than thou. I'm not going to tell you your lifestyle is better or worse than mine. I'm not going to judge anyone. That's not my job. So I have a lot of friends that have my back, and it's kind of interesting because Riley, if you talk to her, she calls people aunt and uncle. She doesn't have any family, right? We don't have family like aunts and uncles, right? So, but when she gets to know somebody, that's her way of complimenting.
She's choosing family.
Hey, that's Aunt Kim. That's Uncle Rich. Hey, Uncle Rich. And she just starts calling them that. They're like, sometimes they don't know why. Okay, so that's who I count on. And man, I go to the Bible and say, okay, I'm struggling with this. Go to prayer. I'm struggling with this. So that's what helps me.
It's so powerful when someone who has worked through so much, who has so much perspective, who can see the light in all the situations, who has done the work to find the treasure and literally exists in a place of gratitude and blessings. It's incredible to witness that in general. And I identify with that, right? You and I've talked. We've got a lot of similarities in a lot of ways that we've both had to unpack. But I'm so grateful that you're able to share that, because these are the conversations that don't often get had around people who have reached a level of success, who have reached a level of significance, who have created massive amounts of impact, right? We start talking about the paths and the whys and the hows and the systems that got us here. But the reality of it is all of this is connected to the universal human experience, right? You've created so much freedom for yourself in your life, financially, time freedom. Like you've created this wealth, but you came from nothing. You've been at both perspectives. And that story is not totally unique to some really high performers in this world in some case, but not all have done the same inner work that you have. Right. And so I want to ask you a similar question to someone else I asked on this show because it's highly relevant for you. You've been at the extremes of both perspectives, right? Yeah. You've been darker, more abuse, more toxicity, more abandonment, more shame, more isolation and disconnection than most people can imagine. And you've talked about multiple situations in your life where there was huge elements of darkness. Okay. Yeah. But you've also established all this freedom. You've shifted, you've reinvented yourself. You've now put yourself in a position to own 30 companies, to have financial freedom in a way that you never envisioned, and in a way that many are chasing and might not ever get to the level that you are, even though you believe everyone's capable. Okay. Yeah. You and I both know that it's their own blocks that'll keep them there. You have this extreme perspective in the light and the dark. Mm-hmm. What's the difference in the human experience?
I would say that it's how you process it, what you take from it, right? If you become a victim, you have no chance. If you feel sorry for yourself, you have no chance. If you let the darkness have any influence over you, you have no chance. We all have dark thoughts. We all have triggers, right? You've studied this stuff, and Deep. So there are triggers every day, Brian. There are every day, right? Fight, flight, fawn, freeze, right? What are those reactions? There are 13 things, according to Peter Walker, to combat those things. I have to be really good at 3 or 4 of them. And one that I do is when a bad thought comes into my head, I get it out and I replace it with a good thought. You know, if I say, hey, I stood in line for government cheese, I would say, man, I remember those grilled cheese that I would make with that cheese. It's really good cheese. Now, Brian, I'm not a foodie, so foodies would laugh at me and say, that's really crummy cheese. But to me,
your perspective then, it was everything.
You could eat, man, because guess what? It's filling your stomach. So it's kind of like Viktor Frankl talks about tragic optimism. Is the difference is you have to be able to take the darkest, ugliest thing and find light in it. Yeah. You have to. And if you can, then nothing can darken your soul. Nothing can darken your heart. Nothing can harden your heart. You are in control of how you feel about that and how you feel, right? And in the Bible, it says, guard your heart, because your heart becomes your thoughts become your actions. Mm-hmm. You got to guard your heart. And so you can't let darkness get in your heart. That's the difference. Yeah. You have to let light in your heart. I mean, Viktor Frankl is in a concentration camp and he's finding the positives in it. Yeah. Right? And then we talked about this, but adversity introduces a person to themselves.
Truth.
So I know that I have a strength that most people don't have.
Of course you do.
Because I've been through more things than most people will ever go through. So, okay, I could say, well, I'm strong and that's great. But if I don't share that strength, if I don't serve other people and help them get confidence that they didn't have that adversity, but I show them, hey, here's something that I learned. Here's something that you might try. Here's something that I want you to focus on. And if I don't do that, then all of that was for nothing. Yeah. All of it was just abuse, trauma, meanness, darkness. There's no light in it. But if I can use it to serve other people, then I turn all of that darkness into light.
Yeah. You know, I want to talk about that Viktor Frankl quote for just a second, right? And specifically around the term guarding of the heart, right? I agree with everything that you said in terms of stacking the importance of the heart. And in your case, and this is where I really want to challenge, just get clarity for the listeners. And this is how I've always had to interpret his quote. Guarding the heart doesn't mean shutting down the heart and living in the head.
Right.
Right. And so, we've talked about this concept of the second we start to protect ourselves, we disconnect, right? So the second we armor our heart, we actually can shut it off, disconnect feelings in our bodies, and live largely in our intellectual narrative and head alone.
Yeah.
And so Viktor Frankl was talking about the integration of all three, the importance of keeping the heart open and pure so we can receive the light and connect with each other. I think that quote can easily get misinterpreted depending on where someone's at in their own journey.
Yeah.
How have you navigated and integrated between protection and guard so that you've been able to keep your heart open? Because with as many situations of perceived abandonment, loss, repeated patterns, frankly, in your life, which again, you and I have talked about, it's like these things don't go away. They're forever chasing us, right?
Yeah.
How have you found that integration for yourself to make sure that your heart's still what's leading?
So I think what it is you have to be smart, right? So you have to think. But when you when you decide you're going to give this person a chance, you have to be okay with either outcome, right? You have to accept either outcome because, look, we're all human. We're all damaged to some degree, right?
I agree.
In different ways. And, I'll give you an example there's this woman that I met at the gym and we've becoming friends. And she's like, hey, and I said, look, I'm not the best version of myself right now. I don't want to go down that path of a romantic relationship because if I do, I just don't right this second but when I'm ready, I want to give us the best chance at it. But look, because we're becoming friends, because I'm getting to know you, because I care about you, I know that we can go down that path. And if either way, you're going to be okay because I would never hurt you. I don't want to hurt you. And I'm going to be okay because we're just going to go down this path totally wide open and vulnerable. And that's it. Right. And so I think that when you make the decision it's like Kim Daly. Kim Daly is my friend. She'll be my friend as long as I'm on this earth, right? Because we've gone down that path.
Yeah.
We've been vulnerable with each other. We've opened up those scars, right? And you got to remember, in our human condition, by the way, scars are that's how we recognize each other, right? I mean, we recognize each other because of our scars. Our scars are a superpower. I know you know that. But if you think about it, okay, I'm gonna go biblical again for a minute.
Let's go, bro. It's okay.
When Jesus came back to earth, I mean, he's God, but he had holes in his hand because that's how you know it was Jesus, right? So I'm not gonna hide my scars. Yeah. And the way that I integrate it is, if you want to hurt me, then I'm sorry for you.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to take advantage of me, I feel sorry for you because I'm going to be okay.
Completely.
Right.
And that's perspective because of all the loss you've had.
Yeah. I know. Look, I could give away, and I've thought about this, Brian. I fantasize about this, give away every dollar I have at 57 years old. I promise you I could recreate it in 5 years and have more than I have.
Well, I'm sure you could.
And so that power, it allows me to be vulnerable because I don't need anything from anybody. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. I'm not trying to do, all I want to do is help them.
Yeah.
Look, I didn't set out to buy 30 companies, but I come in and I talk to people and I go, you know what? Here's something really cool. And they said, Jim, you want to be my partner? You want to? And I'm like, well, I don't, I don't know what I would bring. Well, just bring that. Just bring what you just said. And that's how I ended up owning 30 companies. But I didn't go in here and say, hey, Brian, I want to be part of your car dealership. I want to be part of your electronics company. I want to be part of, I didn't do that. I said, how can I help you?
Yep.
Right? How can I help you? I mean, well, how much is it going to cost me? It's not going to cost you anything.
Yeah.
Help doesn't have to cost money, And
I believe always.
Life is not about money. Wealth is not about money. You get to the point. I mean, if you don't have it, I understand more than you can imagine. It's security. It's self-worth. It's all of those things, but it's not when you get it.
Well, people tie a lot of emotion to money when really money is numbers and energy, right?
Yeah.
It really is. And that's something I'd really like to shift. One, I want to just honor again the way that you even handled that situation with dating, like the level of communication, the level of awareness, and the level of ownership is so clear. And when that happens, that, by the way, is existing with what I call the soft front and the strong spine, because you know who you are, you know what your heart is, you know what your intent is, you know what you're capable of, you know what your boundaries are, you know what you're willing and not able to do, right? And so for all those reasons, you're centered, unwavering in your spine, and you don't need to protect yourself, which means you can just lay out your truth in front of you and allow that person to determine whether or not it's in alignment for them.
Yeah.
I wanted to reflect it back in those words to you, because that's the power of your communication when you have the ability to be vulnerable and authentic, when you don't have to protect anything. Truly, that's when everything in life, including money, flows.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I want to talk about for a second, is this transition between your historical belief around money, what you even used to sell in position in your consulting, and how you started to evolve and create the freedom in that side of the world. I will tell you, and for all the listeners that are here, I want to make sure that everybody understands this. I'm all about vulnerability and authenticity. I've talked about bad decisions, a lot of lost money, things that have happened as recently as the beginning of this year, right? I'm open, but what I've also become really clear on in the last few years, Jim, is everything I ever learned about money until probably the last 3 years is complete crock. And it's the normative things. Like, I was just having a conversation today about, I'm going to historically empty out the 401k that I have, because I've done the math, I've looked at what it is, I know what I can generate as a result of it. And as a partner in a business, I had a sizable 401k, but I didn't know any different, right? Had I utilized the resources I've had available to me in my life in different ways, even including the partnership deal that I had in my old company, right? Like, I got a short-ended deal because I didn't know enough. Right? I didn't know enough how it worked. Please bring us to that transformational moment and into your current state of belief around money.
Yeah. So again, not knowing anything about money, who teaches us about money? Our parents, right? My parents didn't know anything about money. They didn't even know how to pay their bills. I mean, right? So then I let Wall Street teach me about money. That's like letting the devil teach you about the Bible and their interpretation of the Bible, right? I mean, it's like, that just doesn't make any sense. And then I let banks, I thought, and then same thing, 401ks. Well, it's a tax. You're deferring taxes. That's great. No, it's not great, because they won't even tell you. Ryan, would anybody in the audience ever put money in real estate if they didn't understand the tax consequences? No, but you don't understand the tax consequences of your 401k because it's not written yet. It'll be written when you want to take the money out. And if some financial planner tells you you're going to be in a lower tax bracket when you retire than you are now, fire them. That is not the goal, to have less money when you're older than it is when you're younger.
I wish I had a dropping bombs button right now, like my buddy Brad Lee, because that right there is the fucking truth, Jim.
Yeah.
Can you say that again, exactly like you said it, or somewhere close? Because I want that to land.
Yes. So if you think that your goal is in let me back up, Brian, because I'm going to say it, but I'm going to start with
That's fine, please.
Is we were taught that this is what you do. You work hard, you save money, right? I'm not sure. You save money into a lump sum. Wall Street manages it for 30, 40 years and takes a fee. And then you build up this lump sum of money. When they tell you there's enough, that you're going to distribute it at some magical percentage, right? And then you live the rest of your life and you hope you don't run out of money. But don't live too long. And gosh, I hope there's not some kind of medical breakthrough where I'm going to live another 20 years because I'm screwed. I got to die when I'm supposed to. That sounds like slavery, right? Now, then you have a government that's debasing the money that you are saving, right? Okay, so on this earth, I don't, but a lot of people exchange time for money. And if they're stealing or debasing your money, they're stealing your money. If you had $1 in 2020, it's worth less than 70 cents today. Right? That's theft. That's plunder. Right? They're plundering your money. Okay, so that means they're plundering your time. And if your life is measured with your time, they're stealing your life, which is the very definition of slavery.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what's happening. Okay, so if you think the goal is to save money for 20, 30, 40 years, not know the tax consequences when you take it out, not be in control of how much of it you're going to be able to take out, your lifestyle or anything else, and you're going to trust that somebody else is going to take care of that for you, and that you're going to hope that you don't run out of money, that's not the answer. That's not the answer. I have clients that in 5 years have amassed $500,000 or $500 million, sorry, of real estate. 5 years. Okay, this guy is very talented, by the way. You would think, obviously, but he's making $6-8 million a year. You don't probably need all that. I mean, could you be 30% of what he did? Yeah. Could you be 200%? Yeah. You're the only one that knows, right? But my point is that I could do that in 5 or 10 years. I can show anybody how to be financially independent in 5 or 10 years. So why would you ever be the slave and let everybody basically, all of those different entities are parasites. Parasite needs a host. You're the host. They're feeding off of you. Again, I'm not, this is proven over thousands of years.
So what is the answer then?
So the answer is you have to take control. Okay. You have to educate yourself, take control, find a guide, find a mentor that has what you have, what you want, and listen to them. Take the best and leave the rest. Even from me, take the best, leave the rest. Take what is best for you and leave the rest of the crap that I know. Okay. Because I don't know what's right for you. You get to decide that. You have to decide that. And what you do is you build cash flow. You build cash flow and financial independence. And here's my definition of financial independence. That you have to have enough cash flow that exceeds your ideal standard of living. Not your standard of living today. Your ideal standard of living. Yeah. So that means if you want to drive this kind of car, you want to fly private, you want to do this. And here's the secret, Brian. It's not as much money as you think. Right? It's just not as much money as you think. Spending $1 million a year is hard. Okay, so that's the secret. Buy assets. Because the government, which you're not in control of them printing money, what happens to your asset when they print money? Well, you could raise your rents, which increases the value. This is why I love businesses and I love real estate. If I want to buy your home, you tell me how much you think it's worth and I either agree or I don't.
Right.
But when I'm buying a business, the books tell the story.
Right.
We determine the value from the books. Not my opinion, not your opinion. It's the books. And then I look at it and see potential, right? So I buy these assets. What should you invest in? Invest in what you know. What do I know? Guess what? One of the companies that I own is a trash company. Because I knew the guy that owned the trash company, who I met a couple of times when I was a kid, he had the lifestyle. And I was like, well, wait a minute. There's a big difference between the guy that owns the company and the guy that works at the company.
Yeah.
Right? So I bought a trash company.
I, by the way, love that on so many levels. And that's another conversation we're going to have because I'm literally looking for partnerships with trash companies. I didn't even know that. That's amazing.
And it's
how long have you owned that?
Business. Huh?
How long have you owned that?
Since 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what have you learned since owning a garbage company?
I've learned that it's a simple but competitive business.
And necessary.
And there are things that you can provide, value. And here, here's the other thing that I realized is I think women are better at running that company than men.
I think women are better at running a lot of things than men.
I probably could say that about a lot of companies like you said, Matt. I agree with that.
But I think women are still significantly underrated in today's business and entrepreneur environment. I think this is going to be the decade of female entrepreneurship, bro. Like,
I'll tell you, I've met some female business owners in the last few years that are going to run the world. I'm telling you that the next superstar is not going to be Elon or Bezos. It's going to be it's going to be a superstar woman, because they do have a lot of advantages, women, in the way that they see things and see the world, that men don't have, right? But again, I don't care who's got an advantage over me, who doesn't.
But for the garbage company, why do you believe that women could run it better than men? Let's get specific on that one.
Because it's different. People don't buy what's the same, they buy what's different. And so there aren't a lot of women running trash companies. And so our trash company's in Louisville, Kentucky, and I think she's the only one running a trash company in Louisville. So that's the difference.
Now, is this a trash collection company? Like, what specifically does your company do? I'm curious, because I have a question.
The trash, so that you have less hauling. And then we also partner, and we're developing our own hauling, but in unique bins. But these are like roll-off dumpsters. So we have a truck that comes and smashes it, so that you don't have to have, and we save our clients. It's a no-brainer. You add a line item to your billing, and we save you 20% on your track.
No, that's unbelievable.
I kind of don't like that term no-brainer, but it makes sense. It's easy.
Yeah. I'm curious, as a business that supports businesses that need to get their waste gone more effectively, more efficiently, more cost effectively, we know that in businesses in our homes, we are taking out trash every single day.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
Using our language, why do you think so many people are afraid to take out their internal trash from their past?
I think because they think that it's going to expose weakness. I think it's gonna expose lack of something, that that they're afraid of their scars, because they think their scars weaken them, and they don't see their scars as superpowers.
Yeah.
If you grew up really, really, really wealthy, and your nanny raised you, and you didn't have a good relationship with your mom or your dad, and I mean, like I try to think of something like the opposite of the way that I was raised.
Yeah.
I don't judge you. Your trauma could be just as deep and scarring.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't experience your experience. But whatever it is, it doesn't weaken you.
Yeah.
That's the key, is you can't, vulnerability is not weakness, and owning your shit is not weakness.
No,
it's the ultimate in strength. And so all you have to do is just be willing to relive those things. Think, where is the optimism in what happened?
Yeah.
And my again, I'm just making this up. My nanny spoke Spanish. I learned I'm fluent in Spanish. Like whatever it was, find that light. Find that light.
I just appreciate it. It's funny, because we say to people, it's like the only people who don't belong in our world, in the work that we do, is those individuals who lack the desire or the courage to stand in their truth.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm okay. Nothing's wrong with me. I'm okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you just talk about that, I love the scar analogy too. You took me to a really specific moment though, in the way that you said it, because I don't know the words you used, but it was something around the degree of like, they don't take the time to understand the beauty in their scars.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you that I personally identify with that statement. I've had this arm that is beautifully reconstructed. Yeah. This muscle is my gracilis from my leg, right? That allows me to bend my arm and have function. I have use of my fingers. This is my real arm. Yeah, it's smaller. It looks different, right? But for so many years, the young male in me that was focused on external appearance and vanity and different pieces and wanting to look good in a swimsuit and look like other guys, and also created a lot of damage through it. But dude, I'll tell you that the very first time I can remember looking in the mirror and feeling like my arm was beautiful was in the last 5 years.
That's awesome. I mean, because by the way, I don't think that's not unusual to be your age and figuring this stuff out.
No.
Right? Because we want to conform more. We want it to be this way. But I honestly feel sorry for the people that were born into the $1 billion family.
I agree.
And this is the way that I say it, Brian, they were born on the 26th mile marker of a marathon. They could roll the other 2/10 of a
and
mile.
They'll never understand the appreciation for it either.
And nothing they do will ever make an impact on their, I mean, like, they can't accomplish anything. And so what do? They suck the teeth of the machine.
Yeah.
And they just go, well, okay. And they get into drugs, they get into whatever other addictions that people that have like that lifestyle get into, because there's nothing for them to do.
Yeah.
They can't make progress. It's already too big.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But
so
but back to what I think is so cool about you and what you just said is I think your 30s is that pivotal point. It's the fork in the road. You can go one way or you can go the other way. It's like what you've shared on my show about having a, for lack of a better term, come to Jesus meeting with your wife.
Yeah, no.
You could have gone two very different, and I was so impressed that about your response to that.
Oh, thank you.
Is that I was like, I told like probably 5 people. I said, look, because I've not been great at those relationships. Okay, I know I'm going to have a great marriage, and the next time I do it, it will be forever. It will be perfect. It will be great. But your response, I know that I wasn't capable at making the response that you made at 37 or 36 or whenever that happened.
Yeah.
But you know what? Your arm, your heart, it's yours.
Hey, I agree.
You're different. If you were that perfect, and I wanted to be that too. By the way, I wanted to have the 32-inch waist and the V shape and the abs, and that's what I want too. Even at 57, I want that.
Yeah.
But guess what? That's kind of a dime a dozen.
It is. And I honestly, like, that's what's really funny about me saying that is I've never actually wanted something different. I haven't wanted to take my accident back. I've never anything, but I couldn't see the beauty, right? Yeah. I saw the function, I saw the form, I saw the benefit, I saw the opportunity, I saw all these things that shaped for me, created a bunch of this stuff, but I didn't really understand the beauty of like what this actually looks like. And I contrasted it with tattoos because these were the stories that were chosen for me, and these are the stories I chose for myself. It was an element of control, like you were talking about early in your life. I really appreciate you saying that back, my friend. Truly, I'm grateful for that, and I agree. It's all for purpose, it's all for cause, and I'm grateful to be here with you. I've got a couple more questions for you as we wrap today, because you do have so much wisdom, and I want to highlight this area of wealth generation and the financial side and some other pathways, because that you are the authority and one of the authorities in that space. In Jim Oliver's world, when would you start educating your children on personal finance, and how would you go about that?
I would start as soon as they could read, as soon as they can listen, and I would go about it and I'll give you a couple of resources that you can go get today. But there's some great kids books called the Tuttle Twins books, and they take books like Frederick Bastiat's book, The Law. And it talks about how the law is perverted by governments, and just like I said, it creates legal plunder, right? And it breaks it down to something that a kid can understand. There's a book called The Pencil, and it's about economics and how a pencil is a good lesson. There's all of these adult books that they've taken and they've put into kids' stories.
Beautiful.
Stuff that you could read your kid at night. 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old. I'm not sure where it kind of kicks in, but that early. The next thing is Robert Kiyosaki created the best game of all time. Now, Monopoly is my second favorite game of all time. This is my favorite. And by the way, Nick Costco has a 6-year-old kid that beat me in Monopoly, and it's because Nick taught him how to play. Most people don't know how to play Monopoly to win, okay? Now, again, most people don't know how to play the game of money to win.
That's right.
But so cash flow has a kid's version, and you are literally with a balance sheet, and you got to. So I would, as soon as you're reading to your kid, 4 or 5 years old, that's when you start, and you start teaching them the right things about money. You want to go to college? Don't go to college. Own your own business. Learn about something. Get into a business where the person's in their 60s and you can spend 10 years and take over. But think about this, about Monopoly. I want to relate Monopoly to playing the game for fun. That was what most people do with money in the real world, and then playing to win. So in Monopoly, if we were playing Monopoly right now, Brian, and we didn't know how to play, we'd look around the board and we would see, you ever look and see who's got the most money on the side of the board?
Yep.
And we think that's who's winning. But that's not how you win Monopoly. It's not having money on the side of the board. It's having money on the board.
On the board.
How do I have money on the board? Houses, hotels, properties. I got to own those, right? I can bankrupt somebody with the worst properties, and I can bankrupt somebody with the best properties. But there's only one rule of Monopoly that matters. 4 houses equal a hotel. That's all I got to know. Because if I got hotels on my properties and you land on them, I'm going to bankrupt you sooner or later, take all your property, and I'm going to win. So we got to play the game of money in real life to win.
I love that. I love the very simple visual of money on and off the board. You know, particularly in a non-cash world where we can't see so much of the money other than numbers on a screen that are representative of some account balance or what have you. The concept of money for our kids today is even more elusive, I believe. And that's where we've started to get our kids at 7 and 9, these debit cards that we can track and do some budgets with and help them understand how to spend and invest and like start to diversify, because they need the basic metrics and understandings. You know, we're starting to see some really significant banking failures currently, right? Yeah. And I'm really curious, like your thoughts on why and what shifts do you think need to be made in personal finance for most to weather the storm? And, you know, there are folks in their 60s that have still never recovered from 2008. So, you know, in this current period that we're in, again, thoughts on why on the banking failures and maybe some ways to weather and move forward.
Yeah, so the banking failures is banks are greedy. Banks have this thing that's called a Bauer Financial Report. Every bank in the country, not in the world, in the country, has this kind of analysis of their bank, and you could buy it for your local bank for about $50, and it'll rate the bank, by the way, but it'll show you. So you have to understand how banks make money. So you have a depositor, they go down and put money and they deposit it in the bank. By the way, Brian, when you deposit money at that bank, is that an asset or a liability for the bank?
It's an asset.
That's what you would think, but it's not. It's a liability because they got to give you that money back anytime you want it.
Oh, that's right, because it's not their money.
Not their money, right? So now, how do they create that liability into an asset? They go loan it.
Yep, they loan it
to a borrower. The loan is the asset to the bank because they know the borrower has to pay them interest, and then they got to pay you as little as possible.
Yep, that makes sense.
Okay, so if you analyze that, back in 2016, I analyzed that for Bank of America. They were making 2,600% more than they were paying the depositors, and they're using our money. Now, there's only one banking system in the world. It's like water. You can't say water in Lake Michigan isn't connected to water in the Amazon. That's silly. All of this money moves around this one system. So that means if you have money deposited at one bank and you have money borrowed from another bank, they're making 2,600% more than you with your money from you. Okay. So here's something that you have to accept if you're 16 or you're 86. You finance every single thing that you buy. You either pay interest or you give up interest you could have earned somewhere else. So every single thing either has lost opportunity cost or an interest expense.
Yeah.
So what if you could recapture that? Would that be worth more than what you think you're going to get a return in Wall Street? Absolutely, it'd be worth more. If you could just recapture that over your lifetime, the younger, the better, right? So the reason banks are having a hard time is as they have to pay more for their deposits, the ratios go down. If in 2016 they were paying me 0.2% on my deposits, but they were charging an average of 5.2%, that's 2,600%. Back in the 80s when interest rates were really high and CDs were paying 10, and they were getting 20, Well, that's a lot less than 2,600%.
Yeah.
So banks make more money in lower interest environments, not in high interest rate environments. So why are they having trouble? Making stupid loans. I can give you example after example over time, bad loans. Silicon Valley Bank, bad loans, right? They're making bad loans. That's why these big companies, they don't make loans like that. They don't take those risks. So that's one thing. The outlook of money is that, and wealth is that if you do things the way everybody else does them, I call that buying into the reassuring lie, right? Hey, Brian, I'm just doing what everybody else is doing. If we're all going down, we're all going down together. So, okay, you got to get out of that line and you got to get in the line of an inconvenient truth. Now, not Al Gore's inconvenient truth on climate change. I'm talking about the truth is nobody's going to control your money like you. You have to educate yourself. You have to find a mentor. You have to find a guide. You can find them. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
Because you know what? You know this. You interview a lot of people with a lot of money. You think if some 20-year-old contacts me and says, hey, Jim, will you help me? You think I'm going to say no?
Right.
I'm going to say, yeah, here, read these 10 books and then call me.
Because how many calls do you get from 20-year-olds asking for help, by the way?
Hey, I'm cool with that.
No, but how many? That's what I'm asking.
Oh,
like,
how many
legitimately, I'm asking.
I get quite a few, actually.
Well, that's good because that's encouraging because I think there's still a lot of kids who don't ask for help. Right?
I think
I know that at 20, I was too afraid to ask for help. I didn't have the courage to do it.
But you know what? This new generation, they have a different outlook on that. Is they've been told to ask for help, right?
Yeah.
They get that a little bit better than my generation or your generation.
Yeah.
Is they get that a little bit better. And here's what I tell people, your competition, a lot of them don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So there's less competition. If I'm 20 years old, I'm like, hey, it's great that people just want entitlements and want all this stuff because I don't.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go the opposite. But just remember this, Brian, is the majority has never been right about anything.
That's such a good statement. It's true.
So you can't do things the way everybody else is doing them and expect extraordinary results. Is your life going to be common or uncommon, limited or limitless? You get to decide.
So true. You said earlier in our call, you don't believe in luck. You just need enough time and a chance.
Yeah.
Where in your life do you need a little more time and what chance are you still fighting for?
You know what? I'm trying to get healthier and healthier every day because I think that there was a point in my life that I didn't focus on that and I'm upping it. You know, I'm doing this functional workout that the first 6 months, Brian, that I did it, I would be like limping around afterwards and like sore muscles. And you know what? I've been doing it 2 years now. In July, when I get back from a trip in June, I'm upping it to 5 days a week.
Good for you, bro.
And I'm just taking it to the next level.
Good
Always trying to make progress. I don't make fast progress, but I make progress.
It's not always about speed though, right? It's about the path and the progress that you're gaining. And that's what's really incredible. All right, as we wrap up today, I'm curious, my friend, I'd love for you to leave us with a closing thought. And if there is any place, any resource, or anywhere that people can find you to lean into and learn from you, where would that be? So closing thought and best way to contact you.
Absolutely. So the closing thought is, I'll give you this, it goes back to the scars, is your wounds are where the light comes in. Right? That's a quote by, I can't think of the guy's name. He's like an Indian philosopher. But your wounds are where the light comes in. So don't close off your wounds. Because if you do, the light can't get in and all you'll have is darkness. So that's what I would say, is let the light in. Let it in and rock your scars. And okay, so how to find me is, the easiest way to find me is I have a community that's there to help people learn about these things, and I have courses and they're free. Okay. It's community.createtailwind, all one word, .com. Or if you just go to the Apple or Android store, it's Create Tailwind. Just type in that, it'll come up. It looks like this little infinity thing because life is infinite. right? I mean, you could have anything you want, right?
It's the truth.
So that's how you find me, and reach out to me, send me an email, and I'd be happy to engage and help you any way I can.
So you haven't seen this yet, but I have to turn my hat around and show you, because you don't know that our primary branding is a custom infinity for a whole concept of helping people live a no limits life. And the alignment that I feel with you, my friend, is deep, and I am extremely grateful for the time and wisdom and all of what you were willing to share today.
Well, thank you, Brian. And like I said, I've been so impressed at 37. I think you're 37, right?
Yeah, I'm 37. Turned 38 this year, bro. Woohoo!
Yeah. I'm going to be 38. I'm going to be 58 in about a month. So, but I'm so impressed. I wasn't near where you're at 37, not even close. So, kudos to you. I'm proud of you, and I'm excited to see where you go in your life and how many people you impact and change for the good.
Thank you, brother. I'm just getting started, and I'm grateful to have many people like yourself who've blazed the trail before me. I'm just trying to tap into the collective wisdom and shorten my own curve to even more massive impact, because that's what it's all about, brother. And it only happens together.
Do to help you shorten that curve as much as you can.
I appreciate that. And for those of you who tuned in, man, Jim went deep today. He told us the stories of foster care that led to isolation, disconnection, and not feeling safe or protected in his life until his mid-20s. That said, patterns have repeated and everything continues to shape, but this man has created time freedom, financial freedom, not only for himself, but for literally tens of thousands of other people, because of the philosophies in how he develops business and shifts people to become their own bankers. But he said it best, right at the end. Lean into the light. Don't close off the wounds. Show your scars. But the only way that you can get to create the freedom and continue to try to stack against the luck and have time just give you the chance, the only way you've got a chance is if you flip open your lid and scan your can. What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is, if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.